Well, we back again for another exciting show in the Counselor's Corner and also hanging out with her. So this week we want to focus on red flags in relationships. And the last 4 weeks we've been talking about, are you relationship ready? But sometimes people are so focused on being relationship ready, trying to get that relationship, that they don't even see the red flags that are coming their way. So, okay, we got Yvonne on here, um, Bridget, Romel, thanks for joining me. And I'm going to read the introduction in a moment. All right, so what else is going on? Well, as far as this week, this is our last week. As far as an education, Friday is our last day until the break. Thank God, man. And today we had a day off, a snow day, but I decided just to go in for some peace and quiet and to try to get some work done. I could have stayed home, but so it was only like 4 people in the building, so that was just like having a day off as well. So 4 more days, man. It's long overdue when you get to this stretch. But the thing about it is, once we come back in January, it's all downhill. The year just fly by after that. But I'm super excited for the holiday because also, of course, I always gotta go to come to my hometown, and I'm gonna have a little book signing. I'll be posting details soon as far as a book signing for No Friday Foolishness. What else is going on? Oh, shout out to all the real Buffalo Bill fans, the real ones that stuck with them when they lost 4 Super Bowls, the ones who never changed up and got a new team. So, congratulations to them. This definitely should be an exciting time when that playoff atmosphere is in the air and everybody's out buying their Bills gear and having their playoff parties. So it's coming. So it's well deserving of the Bills to turn it around, and it looked like they got a good thing going. So even though they beat my boys last night, and we still hanging on to the 6th seed, but I have no expectations for them when they're playing with a third string quarterback. So I'm just enjoying it. No pressures, no butterflies, or worried about my team getting put out. If they get in and they do something, oh well, I'll roll with it. But if they get put out first round, if they make it, that's life. Maybe next year we'll come back better. All right, so that's that. Red flags in relationships. Well, this is the time of the year many people see red and think of the holiday spirit, but many of us should think about red flags in relationships, red flag behaviors that are suspect, illegal activities, and addictive behaviors that haven't been resolved and continue into your relationship are obvious red flags. But you shouldn't ignore or excuse anything that strikes you as a strange or that strikes you as strange or makes you feel uncomfortable. Herb will be discussing 3 essential talking points. One, why do we ignore red flags? Two, the dangers of ignoring them. And three, how to disengage from potentially dangerous relationships. Call in. Take this number down: 605-313-5375. The code is 268328. And shout out to everyone who has came in. Let me just go through. We got Romel, thanks for coming in. Bridget, Malika, Frederick, McCoy, Eric Williams, Ebony. Hey, Ebony. See, Marcia, Frederick. Frederick said, hey, good brother. What's going on, Fred? And hey, Marcia. So red flags. So we're going to talk it. Everybody should have had experienced some red flags in some point in their life. And tonight I would like to, discuss some of those things. And I'm going to pass the mic on over to Herb so he could start tackling his essential talking points. But man, those red flags, man, is something else. We have to break down this subject so that we can move forward. All right, Herb. So, what's your take on these red flags and why people ignore them? Why do they continue on? How come people can't recognize them? It's a lot. It's a lot to this.
Thank you for having me on tonight. This is our topic. I think men and women alike need to address and need to understand on a deeper level why we do some of the things that we do. But before I start to address that, I want to do a public service announcement. Those of you who have been listening to the show, at least as far as I've been co-hosting, are aware that I mentioned 3 names on YouTube. And as far as I go, as far as I'm concerned, these are 3 prominent people that have helped to shape my views going forward as an older man. You're never too old to learn new information and, more importantly, to employ it. One of those gentlemen's names is Kevin Samuel. The other's name is Ron Willis. And more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, the gentleman that goes by the name of Black Gnostic Speaks is another individual. Recently, the gentleman known as Black Gnostic Speaks has had somebody target his daughter by doing what they call doxing. Doxing is taking a person's personal information and posting it on the web. That is a form of cyber bullying and cyber stalking, which is a crime. Now, because of this gentleman has taken a wealth of information that he has been disseminating for over 30 years. The gentleman is 60 years old. So he's what I would call an elder statesman, an educator, and as far as Black America goes, he's an intellectual elite. We need to defend people who attempt to uplift us out of the malaise that we are in. Some of us are still living day to day. Some of us are still lost in what I would call the United States of America and the melting pot. We are, continually pushed aside, our issues ignored, and for the large part dismissed. Anytime there's something that comes up that benefits us, it's always being pulled on by other entities. You can name whatever cause you want to, be it civil rights, reparations, or affirmative action. Those things have been watered down that were designed to help us coming out of slavery and into the civil rights era. So, if you know anybody that's doing that type of nonsense, that's targeting people because they don't like their message, please do me a favor, do David a favor, do the world a favor, report them, because we don't need that type of negativity. The people that get on YouTube that create content, they do it because they love it. The money is nice, but trust me, they do what they love. They do it because they love it. I do this because I like it, and I'm sure David does it because he likes it. But neither one of us want our family targeted because people don't like what we say. I know I say some pretty controversial things, but the last thing that I want is anybody targeting my siblings, although most of my siblings can handle themselves, mother, father, nieces, and nephews. This is why I tell my family members, don't tag me in anything family related, because I don't want people targeted. All right, so I just, I had to get that out the way because that was near and dear to me. When I got that information that he was no longer going to be doing podcasting, I was infuriated and saddened at the same time. And for me to get to a level of anger that I want to actually do something says a lot. So let's get into this red flag thing. There's been a statement that I kind of go fine with, and it says that men date women hoping they won't change, and women date men hoping they can change them. And I think that's the crux of why we find ourselves ignoring the red flags. So let's get into the why, and we're going to have a special guest coming in very shortly, and she's going to give her own personal perspectives of what her ignoring red flags has changed her life into. So let's get into the whys. We date based on what we've learned. In the United States of America, it's a top-down dating style criteria, pardon me. Hollywood sets the trends for most of what America idealizes as a as a um as a prospective mate, whether it's money, looks, or status. And status, believe it or not, plays a major role in how women select mates. Women are social creatures, then they are the hierarchy when it comes to social class. So they're looking for men with class, looks, and money. And it's a combination of those things. And of course, physicality is always a bedrock. Those are some of the things that women look for. Men, obviously, there's the physical attraction. What can she do for me in terms of raising my children, securing my home, and allow me to live peacefully? You know, those are the things for men, and those are the important things I mentioned are the things for women. So when we get into the dangers of ignoring red flags, we tend to think that I can change this individual, or no, that was just them, and is it really that bad? And we don't realize how deep the water is and how filled with crocodiles and sharks and other predatory things that water is until we're knee deep in it and we can't get back to the shore. So one of the ways that you can disengage yourself from something that you see is potentially dangerous to you is you have to already have an exit strategy. And this is not to say you date with one foot in. This is to say that when you see something that isn't right, you're already saying, okay, you know what? I can't go any deeper into this river because I don't know what's out there. And this is for people that ignore red flags. If you don't ignore red flags, then this information really doesn't pertain to you and it really won't be of much use to you. So you say, okay, wait a minute. I have to slowly disengage myself from consistent contact with this individual, whether you start working more, whether you pick up different hobbies, whether you start hanging out with different people, you have to disengage from this individual. Because if not, you're going to end up spending more time. You're going to end up getting mentally committed, physically committed. And once you're at those two levels, you're pretty much committed. And you're pretty much along for the ride. So you're on the roller coaster until the roller coaster stops.
But let me chime in on some I think like three of the reasons why people ignore before we even get to that point. And one of them is because everybody has a like an intuition, and they kind of have a gut feeling, and they may feel a certain way. But I think a lot of people ignore the red flags because they feel that those red flags are telling the truth, and it's a painful story. So most people try to you try to avoid painful situations by all costs, even though like the situation may seem bleak or whatever the case is, but you don't want that pain. Nobody likes to carry around a lot of pain. I think another reason is sometimes people just be hoping that their intuition is wrong. Like, this can't be right. Everything is going so good with me and this person that I don't want anything to step in his way. So that would be the reason. And I got some notes here. So, and thirdly, the simple fact that you want to believe your partner. You don't want them to think you crazy. You don't want to throw things out there, and it ends up, even though you feel that it's a red flag, but you're afraid to put it out there because mainly the way your partner may respond to it. And you don't want to look like you're crazy if they kind of look at you or kind of say, what the hell are you talking about, or whatever the case is. So a lot of times people they go with the flow. And that's just not early in relationships. That's like throughout, like in marriage or whatever the case is, that you get comfortable with a situation. And so people just decide to stay with it, stay the course, especially if it's not killing them, even though it may be doing other harm to them. Just wanted to throw those in there.
Yeah, and those are very valid um, points. And I'm going to follow that up with saying this. One of the reasons why you don't want to, even though what David said is absolutely correct, because I've been guilty of that, and I know I've mentioned, before I had a situation where, and maybe I didn't mention the entire situation. I just actually spoke of the aftermath of what the situation compelled me to do in terms of not having any intimate contact with women for about 6 years. What the catalyst of that was, and I think that might be a guest host coming in, so I'll make this short. I had a situation in which a female was feeling she was pregnant. Now, she lived in Niagara Falls. Well, she lived in Welland, Ontario, and the whole situation had came to a head where she apparently was messing around with some other guy. So when I contacted her mother had told me what the situation was, and she, being the type of person that she was, devious, manipulative, and deceitful, told her mother only half the story. So when I got to her mother's house, because I was actually supposed to go to work that night, when I got to her mother's house, I laid the whole situation out to her mother, and we ended up doing a pregnancy test, and the pregnancy test came back negative, and I beat it out of there. I left the situation and was just gone. So that was one of the things that compelled me to reassess why I was dating the individuals that I was, because that wasn't the first situation. It was one of multiple situations. So I had to sit back and ask myself, why am I dating the people that I am? And when I did that, for me, it was a catharsis and a cathartic moment. And ever since then, I really have had no problems dating. Callers, you want to identify yourselves?
Hi, this is Katie calling.
Thank you, Katie. Now we were just getting into the red flag relationships and how and why we ignore them and the dangers. Can you give us a little background on what your situation is?
Well, first let me say, how you doing, Katie? This is David.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. Glad you joined us.
Thank you. So my situation is that I'm just separating from a 20-year marriage. It became abusive. It was the sort of thing where it snuck up on me, I think. Started very small and got worse over time. And I probably overlooked some red flags in that relationship for sure.
Now, you say you're in the process of separating. How are you actually going about doing that so that no harm comes to you? And more importantly, anything that may have come of that union, whether it's children or anything else?
Well, we're both working with therapists, and I have a unique situation in that my husband is aware that his behavior has been wrong and that he very much wants to change. So I have been able to work with him, and he has been willing to seek help. Alcohol was also a factor, and that would have been a very complicating factor if he were not willing to stop drinking. He has stopped drinking for a few months, and I could see a big difference there in terms of his ability to control his temper. So I'm kind of hoping that we can do this ourselves with the help of counselors and therapists that we have access to without involving, authorities or that sort of thing. But it'll remain to be seen. What we're doing right now is that he's going to move out, and I'm going to stay home with the kids, and we're going to sort of work towards where he comes and spends time with the kids. And as long as he stays sober and stays seeing his therapist, then I would very much like to be able to trust him with our kids. His issues were more taken out on me than they were on the kids, but he didn't always have the best relationship with his kids either. He tended towards being short-tempered and inconsistent, and so he's trying to work on changing that, and I'm trying to support him in that because I want my kids to have a good father.
Is the ultimate goal also for y'all to get back together, or is that done?
At this point, we're taking a year to kind of, he signed a year lease on another place, and I said we need to back burner that because I tried very many times to give him another chance and try again, and it backfired each time, and I just got to the point where I said I need to separate myself from this situation so that I can focus on taking care of our kids and supporting you and having a positive relationship with your children. But as far as our personal relationship, I have nothing left to give. I'm empty. I really gave all that I could to that man. And I said, we can revisit this at the end of the, give it this year, work on your relationship with your kids, work on staying sober, work on staying in counseling. And we can revisit that question much closer to the end of the year. But I'm personally not in a position to have anything to offer or give on that level anymore at this point in time.
See, I think that I think that's the thing that we as people, we need to understand, and it's sad to say we need to guard against. Sometimes our desire, and this doesn't necessarily pertain to her, our desire to be in a relationship overwhelms our desire to be by ourselves until we find a person that we deem worthy of our company. And I know it's easier said when you reach a certain age than it is when you're younger, because what happens when you're younger is whoever sets your gender for a relationship is what you're going to fall into. So whether it's your parents, your peer group, or social media at this particular point in time, particularly for the millennial generation and Generation Z's coming up, they are going to set the template for what an individual seeks in a relationship. And I think that's the dangerous, because given the rise of fatherless homes, divorce rates, and everything having to do with those things, nobody has a set trying to find a word, a set template for what a good relationship looks like and how it functions. Everything in Western culture that we see that leads us to a relationship is either dysfunctional or it's ineffective. So that leads a lot of us, and I don't believe anybody's immune to this, especially anybody that's under the age of 45. I don't believe that any of us are immune to making decisions based on false information or red flags. So I know I've ignored them plenty of times, saying, I can change this individual. I'm that good of a person that, that anything that comes in my spirit, I can change. And we want to avoid that. We want everybody going into relationships to pick a partner that's healthy. And when I say healthy, I'm talking about mind, body, and spirit. We don't want to date people that have negative energy. And I know that phrase is tossed around ad nauseum. And negative energy could be as something as an individual not taking good physical care of themselves, an individual always complaining, an individual that never gets anything that goes right for them. Those are signs that you want to pay attention to. Do they go out? Go ahead, Kathy.
I would agree with that, and I would say it's interesting because I came from a very religious household where nobody in my family gets divorced. We're Catholic, and none of my mother came from a family of 8, no divorce in that family. My father came from a family of 6, no divorce in that family. None of my grandparents got divorced. And so I think in some ways that led me, even though I'm not a practicing Catholic and I'm not a religious person that practices now, but it most definitely gave me a background where it said once you are married forever, and you just have to figure out a way to live with that person. You don't have a choice. You don't get a divorce. You don't end a marriage. A marriage is forever. And so coming from that perspective, each time that I would address these issues with my husband and say, I need you to drink less, and I need you to be kinder to the kids, and I need you to not take out your anger at stuff that has nothing to do with me on me. And he would more, he'd kind of give lip service to it, like, you're right, I need to do better, whatever the case might be. But the behaviors wouldn't change. And I think that I just felt that since there was no option in my worldview for ending the marriage, that I had to accommodate it. I had to work around it. I had to figure out ways to make that acceptable. And no one ever said to me about, especially emotional, mental abuse. Nobody ever taught me anything about that, and I didn't really know anything about it. And so what happened is my mental health just began to go downhill year after year. And I thought I had, seasonal depression. I thought I had all these things. Everybody thought it was my fault, including me. And that went on for some years where I just kept getting worse and worse and worse. because I just kept trying to accommodate somebody else that had bad energy, that was damaged, that refused to acknowledge his own damage or take responsibility or really do anything to try and fix it, until it finally did get to the point where I said, you have to get some help. You have to see somebody and get some help with this, or I have to leave. I can't keep doing this anymore. And so it was unfortunate that it went on as long as it did, and it was as damaging as it was, because I think had I not had this worldview where you don't leave a marriage no matter what, you just figure out ways to make it work, I may have confronted some of those things more severely earlier on. I wouldn't have had to get to the point where I felt like I'm going to die if I don't leave this situation, and I'm just going to die of depression and sadness and loneliness.
So,
and say you have to do something to change.
So, Katie, don't you think with?
But I wish I had done that earlier.
So, don't you think with him knowing that he kind of had that in his back pocket, like she's not going anywhere, so I can tell her that I'm going to change and I'll change for a little bit, but meanwhile he was going to go back to his behaviors that he was comfortable with, knowing that you were always going to be there.
Absolutely. I think that was a big part of it. My therapist said that too. And one thing that was very eye-opening to me is when I first came to the realization that, oh, this relationship is abusive. It's not just that I wish he would be different, or, he's an asshole sometimes. Like, this is a pattern that repeats itself. And, I spend a lot of time living in fear and arranging my whole life to try and not make him mad, walking on eggshells all the time. And this is very debilitating. And I spoke to a friend of mine who is also a devout Catholic. She's got 6 kids. She's been married for about 25 years. Very devout Catholic. Goes to mass constantly, just everything. And she said to me, I think you might be overly committed to your marriage. And that was a real eye-opener. I thought, wow, this is a practicing Catholic telling me 6 kids, telling me she thinks I'm overly devoted to my marriage. And I'm not even religious. But it was just the messages that I had received growing up that you don't ever. And the other thing is, my husband came from a family where everybody divorced. His mother's been married several times. His father's been married several times. All of his grandparents have been married several times. And so when we first met and got together, one of our big things is we will never get a divorce. And to me, I was like, yeah, that's normal to me. Like, I'm never planning on getting a divorce from anybody ever. That's just, if I get married, I'm getting married for life. And he was like, I don't want to repeat the mistakes of my parents, so I will never get a divorce. So we both went into it and made it through 2 decades just with the idea that we would never get a divorce. And I think it probably did enable him to be a little bit lazy in terms of, like you said, go right back to where he was comfortable. Where he was comfortable was dysfunctional. Where he was comfortable was when he felt angry, he just got to take it out on whoever was there. Where he was comfortable was when things got too difficult, he went and opened a drink, and he just could drink his problems away. And so it had to get to the point of being pretty bad before I was like, I actually have to be willing to walk and tell him that. And then that was when he started to slowly begin to take some action and try to do better. And that's still been like a 2-year road then, with a lot of pitfalls in it. But I do see some change now, but it's almost like, as far as our relationship goes, I don't have any, I'm not going to open myself up and trust on that again. I will support him in being a father to his children and doing the best he can, and I'll support that in any way I can, because that's for my kids and that's important. But as far as like the personal side of it, it was almost like I had to let go of him completely to take care of myself, because he wasn't going to take care of me, and somebody had to, because I got to take care of those kids. So
yeah, you got to be sound mentally, and you got to live for them. So his needs, I mean, not that you would be cold-hearted like that, but at this point, your kids' needs is more important, and he has to step it up, and if he wants that relationship with his kids would essentially probably make your relationship better, then he'll know he has to do what he has to do.
Yeah.
And really be commended for that, Kathy. First of all, for appearing on this show, and second of all, for taking the stance that you have. And I think women bear an inordinate amount of responsibility when it comes to rearing the children that come about after a union like this has been consummated. And I know I always say, just get out of the relationship. It doesn't matter where you go so long as you get out. And I know it's easy for me to say, being that I'm a male and I don't have any children. But women, if you hear this podcast now or in the future, you have to find a way to extricate yourself, because it's not going to improve. It's only going to worsen. And I don't care who's telling you what, just like Kathy had her friend tell her that you might be overcommitted to a marriage. Never deal with somebody who say that an option is not on the table. That's first and foremost. You have to be able to utilize any tool that is at your disposal to improve your life. And that means separating yourself from toxic people, whether it's a good friend, a family member, or just a social circle. Do it, because your mental welfare is your greatest asset. Because once your mental welfare starts to wane, the physical is right behind it. This is why, old school people used to always hear our parents say, no matter what happens to me, never let me lose my mental faculties. And that's why, because once you mentally start to regress in life, you become a war to anybody that wants to use or misuse or do anything less than humane to you. And I really can't stress that enough. So make sure, especially this time of year, because depression seeks in, suicide rates go up, and death rates go up among people who are isolated. And that's one of the things that people try to do, whether you're male or female. They'll try and isolate you from your friends, from your family. And if a female happens to get pregnant and he's not there to assist as a father and or a husband would, then the burden really becomes untenable. So you find yourself trying to do this, you find yourself trying to do that, and you're doing it all alone, even though you're not alone. Because I don't care who has a kid, you don't get pregnant by yourself, or you don't impregnate someone by yourself. So once you start having kids, it really adds another ball into what you're trying to juggle. And if you're working, that's another ball that you have to juggle. So believe me, people, those things are out there, and no matter how small something seems, you would do your due diligence to examine that.
Well,
I can't stress that enough. Go ahead, Dave.
Let me add to that. So, and I know you said, you told people to, women, if they're going through that, to exit out the situation. But wouldn't it, again, go back to some people with their culture, their belief system, their religion, to say, some people say, you know what, I'm just going to leave it in the hands of God. I prayed on this, and I'm hoping that things will change. And some people sit around waiting and praying on this till they get to the point, like Katie was saying, that you're broken down mentally, you're depressed, you feel like you're just going to die. And I think that's why we have a lot of mental health issues and stuff in our communities. Well, just society, period, because some of the old indoctrined beliefs that people put out there. But this is a new world. It's more exposure to different things, whatever. And sometimes the old way it works, you always got to take bits and pieces of everything and make it work for you. If you focus on one particular thing too much, that's right there is an imbalance. So you got to take things that you like from this particular thing, things that you like from this particular thing, and make it work for you. And stop putting all your eggs in one basket on one particular belief.
I'm in agreement. It's like eating. In order to have a balanced diet, you have to pull from several different groups of foods. No one food is going to make you healthy, just like no one way of getting information, absorbing that information, putting that information to use is going to benefit you. This is why I tell people, make sure you surround yourselves with people from, different walks of life. It doesn't matter what they do so long as they have a different perspective than you, because what that does is it allows you to bring in different information, and you never know what information could be beneficial to you in order for you to get to another level in life. And whether that level is increased money, better relationships and rapport with people you work with, better rapport with people you bump into. Because let's face it, there's a chance meeting that you can have on the street that can change your worldview. You don't know. Case in point, when I was in Toronto last week, I had just left the CN Tower. I'm walking the Blue Jay Way, going to my hotel, I believe I was, going to take a nap before I went out for the night. And there happened to be a female who I knew was younger than I was. She was wearing a Batman hat. Now, I asked her, I said, do you know who played the original character of Batman? And I was taking the guess that she probably didn't, and she knew. So I asked her, do you know who played Robin? And she knew that too. Now she said, well, what is my prize? I said, unfortunately, I don't have a crew of cameras behind me or money to offer you. I said, so I can give you, an applause. Now, just imagine if I had $100 and I given it to her because he answered it right. What do you know? She got $100 for being friendly and answering a couple questions from a stranger. Then there was a game show called Cats. I think it was called Cat's Cab. People were getting the cab. It was a game show, and they didn't know. So just imagine if you get into a situation and you're having a crummy day and you respond to somebody who's being friendly and just in a nasty and vile manner. And they're going to look at you and say, you know what? You're just a deplorable human being. Now just imagine if that same person you saw, you needed something that you asked that person and say, you know what, last time I saw you, you were so mean and nasty to me that I'm not going to help you. Those are the type of things that you want to be able to avoid because you're happy internally. And once you're happy internally, it's very difficult for somebody to change your latitude. I know I've had people, they try me for whatever reason. I'm just like, look, I don't have the time to deal with your nonsense. I'm going to leave you to your demons. I'm not going to invite your demons into my life. And that's what a lot of what we do. And that's one of the reasons why we run into red flags is we want to fix people who don't want to fix themselves. So when you run into somebody and they don't want to fix themselves, leave them where they are. The first step in NA and AA is you have to acknowledge that you have a problem. Change starts from within, whether it's deciding that you don't want to drink anymore, deciding that you don't want to use or abuse drugs, deciding that you have an issue that you want to resolve, not for everybody else, but just for yourself. And I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it, excuse me, that Kevin Samuel says, seek therapy. And I am 101% in his corner when he says that, because you just don't know. You don't know what issues you might have that are underlying issues that keep you from having good relationships with people. And I want to address something that Marcia said. Someone can be in a toxic relationship, but they don't recognize the red flags. But others can act like friends, family members, but yet never have that conversation with that person. How come? Because they don't want to acknowledge what they feel. Fear drives a lot of behaviors, whether it's fear of the known or fear of the unknown. And I was listening to, I believe it was Kevin Samuels, and he said the same thing. He said, so long as we don't think anything is wrong, we don't do anything. But the moment something happens that threatens your life, you act. And you want to avoid getting to that point in your life to where things become a life and death situation. There's so many times along our journeys in life, we see things in other people that we say, you know what, if that were me, I wouldn't tolerate that. Until that situation happens to visit us, and then we just say, well, you know what, I thought I could do this, or I thought I could do that, and it's not until you actually get to a point where you're just about broken as a person that you say, okay, you know what, I have to get out. And then you start to ask, well, how do I get out? For women with children, there's the YWCA, there's battered women's shelters, and I know for men, they're starting to come out with some things that are similar, because a lot of people think that men can't be abused in relationships. And I'm here to tell you that they can. Now, I know I'm aware of the whole macho thing that men don't do this, men don't do that. Look, I'm here to tell you, if you are male and you are dealing with a female that's mentally abusive, leave her alone, get out. If you have children with her and you think those children are in danger, call CPS, report her. There's no shame in saving yourself. So stop being browbeaten by social media, Western culture that talks about macho men don't do this, macho men don't do that. Get out, report her, get yourself to safety, and then make sure those kids are safe. Because those kids didn't have a choice coming into this world. You as an adult have a choice in what behaviors you acknowledge and what behaviors you allow. And I know this is no trope, and people may not like it, but nobody is going to treat you in a way that you don't allow them to treat you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say most people do stuff because they can. They can do it. And when you think about like women being abusive, they already know how, and they'll do it at times when there's people around in his family and they try to demean or put the guy down because they know that he may be laid back. That's not his thing to be confrontational. He's kind of like a chill guy, and that's when they take shots like that. But I guess that's why a lot of times what leads to all this domestic abuse, that sooner or later people will eventually snap. And that's when you see shit on the ID channel and all of that stuff. So you just gotta be careful all across the board. I mean, when you're doing something and you know it don't feel right, sometimes you gotta let up. You gotta let up. And I always tell people, I don't care if it's family members, if I'm in a relationship, I'll say, I try to be laid back and chill. I said I don't bother nobody until they bother me. And once they bother me, then you can pack your lunch. We can go at it. But otherwise, I don't really want to engage in that stuff. But if you won't smoke, I can give you the smoke, whatever. But I try to stay away from fires.
And to that, I can't say I've ever been in a situation where, at least to my recollection, where I've had people, try to pull my car, so to speak, because I'm a laid back person. I haven't had a fight since 1991. And I always tell people, beneath this quiet, demure exterior, there's an asshole waiting. And you don't want to unleash the asshole. And people always say, well, no, he ain't that. Trust me. I can get there in a synapse. And I would not have a problem doing damage to somebody. And I've always said this, and particularly for me, it holds true because I do security. And people would always try to use that against me and other people that I've worked with that do security. And my whole thing was this. I walked in here and I'm walking out. And if that means you have to be stretchered and taken to the ER, then so be it. I'll deal with the repercussions and ramifications afterwards. And sometimes that's how you have to live your life, particularly if you're a soft-spoken individual, because people will use that. They will use your cultural upbringing against you. They will use a social fabric against you. They will use everything possible against you to keep you regimented in the behavior that they want you in. And that's so they can manage and manipulate you. And if you fall victim to somebody that's trying to manipulate you, get out. Don't even give them an explanation. Pack your stuff and leave. Especially if you don't have any kids, get out and leave. You don't owe them an explanation. You do owe it to yourself to live a life that's drama-free. And so many people seem to want to live in a life filled with drama. I don't know if it's because of the programming they watch or the dysfunction that they have with their family. And like Kathy said, with her husband's family is surrounded by the dysfunction. So for him, it may have been normal, whereas For Kathy, it wasn't. And like her friend said, you know, you might be overcommitted to your marriage. You can be overcommitted to a friendship. So if you find somebody always asking for something, they never ask if you need anything, that's a red flag. I'm here to tell you. I don't deal with too many people that ask me for too many things. I don't care who it is. And I'm quick to tell you no. I've been called selfish. I've been called arrogant. I've been called mean. And you know what? Every morning I go to sleep, I am at peace with the person that matters most, me. Far too often, we like to get in relationships and you hear that old talking trope, I want somebody that compliments me. No, get into a relationship as a whole person. So when you get into another relationship with a whole person, you two can build together. And if there's children that result of that relationship, then that child comes into a situation and that child goes up through that. Just like you see rose bushes tied to lattice work, that's what you want the children of that relationship to be. You want them to grow up to be strong, mentally stable, aware of what a good relationship looks like and functions. So they can go out to the world and they can replicate that. But far too often, we are content with replicating dysfunction until we wonder why the world seems to be just burning down around us. And if you look at some of the things that your friends are going through, and your friends are consistently surrounded by people who do dumb things, people who do stupid things, people who are consistently down on their luck, you will see a pattern of behavior. This is why I tell people, I judge a person by their friends. I judge a person by the company they keep. So if I see you hanging out with people that smoke weed, that consistently drink, that don't work, I got to assume that you're that type of person. And I would rather err on the side of caution than give you the benefit of the doubt. Because if me erring on the side of caution means I continue on my trajectory upward, then I'm okay with that decision. Even if it's an incorrect decision. Because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say, hey, look, I'm going to give you some advice. The people that you're hanging out with, they're not good for your image. And image is everything. That's another thing that Kevin Samuel says. Image is everything. Because if you're hanging out with people who work, who live well, who eat well, guess what they're going to think about you? They're going to think that you live well, you eat well, you do everything that you need to do to live a decent life.
Well,
so people just be aware that, you know, ignoring those red flags could ultimately lead to your demise. And we hear, like they said earlier, with the programs that come on the ID channel, we hear about people that are so obsessed with controlling their mate's movement that they're willing to kill themselves and their children. It happens. I haven't personally had any friends or family members who have befallen that, but I read the paper every day or electronic paper now. That print media is pretty much going by the wayside, but it happens. I know in Niagara Falls, we've had a couple women who have just appeared in abandoned homes, bodies mutilated. And Niagara Falls is a small city compared to some of the other cities in this country. We're a city of just under 50,000 people. So if it's happening here, I know it's happening in other places. So, you know, check in on your friends. Check on your friends who might be isolated, who don't get out and do a lot. If they going through depression, shoot them a message. I know I just did recently, and the reply I got back seemed kind of cold, and I had to remind myself, you know what? This individual is dealing with her own internal demons. So I had to kind of recoil back from just replying. I was like, okay, understood. So don't internalize somebody's reply if you're checking in on them, because they might be struggling with their own demons. So you want to be aware of that and extend to them every courtesy and, more importantly, every understanding and empathy you can. And just make sure that they're still here, you know, that they're still rivers above ground. Because once you're gone, you're gone. You know, and that's another thing I experienced with BGS Department. It was like a door had just been closed that I had just walked through. And I'm a person that seeks out information, particularly when it comes to the existence of Native Black Americans on this continent, because there's so much that we need to deal with within ourselves before we can ask anybody else to help us. And it's similar to what Malcolm X said. He said, there can be no black-white unity until there's black unity. And there's so much disunity among us that it's hard for us to progress as a people because we're always in fight. And that's another red flag. If you find people that can't get along with their family, you definitely don't want to be with them, because you're going to be the next closest thing to their family. So what do you think is going to happen to you in that relationship?
Well, see, you're
not going to get along.
That's kind of that's a catch-22 right there. But I do want to read Frederick comment. He said, "You won't seem like a fool walking away from a relationship that's toxic. Foolishness is staying for the wrong reasons and truly not happy, and continuous lies you tell yourself." So yeah, you have to get to that point. But again, I've said it over and over. Part of the problem is the people that you have in your circle that you're reaching out to, who's giving you poor advice. I mean, there's no point. That's like me, trying to be an educator and trying to rise above, or being a top-notch author, but yet I'm going to someone who's not even at my level. Doesn't mean that person that's not at your level can't give you no good feedback. But essentially, you gotta deal with people who's been through some things, who know how to move forward. And I think a lot of times we deal with people who give poor advice and live in, they're in poor situations themselves. Also, let me follow what Marcia. She said, it took losing both of my parents, which forced me to take a hard look at my marriage of 35 years in order for me to make some drastic changes within myself. At this point, that's when my husband became very intimidated by me. At this point, I was mentally and physically drained by his need to control, and we just grew apart. I was in the process of leaving him, but unfortunately, he passed. This is real.
And that's important that you had to, go ahead, Dave, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying this is real, that when you think about it, like, life isn't forever. Time is short. And many of us, we go through things that you're in a toxic situation. And what is one of the precursors of a lot of illnesses is stress. It's stress. Mm-hmm. So if you stress mentally, there's going to be a lot of other things that it's going to impact, whether people pay attention or not. People quick to say, "No, I ain't stressed. I got no worries. I'm living my best life." Really? And I think that's the problem too. We just too caught up in these catchphrases and all that shit that everybody else saying, but you really not living it, but you just repeating what other people say. We got to live for ourselves and make moves and know where we fit in certain situations.
I'm in agreement, and this is why I tell people, surround yourself with good people. You might have to change your routine. You might have to change your job. And worst case scenario, you might have to move to another city. You might have to move to another state. And fresh start is not a bad thing. It gives you perspective. And sometimes in life, a lot of what we lack is just that. It's just perspective. And changing, excuse me, I liken it to this. Your worldview will not be the same as it is when you're 20, as it is when you're 30, as it is when you're 40, because you get more information, and the way you view and the way you deal with things change. It's just like a person who's 6 foot tall versus a person who's 5'6" versus a person who's 5'6". You don't look at things the same. It's impossible because you're viewing it from different angles. Excuse me. So that's what you want to do in life. You want to be around people, and I said this earlier, you want to be around people who can give you a different perspective on something. You might be working on a project and you might be stuck at work. And so you go to somebody that you trust and you say, hey, take a look at this for me. What do you see that I don't see? What could I do that's different than this? Or what would you do if this was your problem? You had to come up with a solution. And you would be surprised with the information you get from other people. This is why it's invaluable to have yourself surrounded by a network of people who come from different walks of life. I can't stress that enough. I have the pleasure of working with a gentleman who's from a small island in the I can't recall the ocean. Wow. He's northeast of Madagascar, called Mauritius. The gentleman, I think, is 28, 29 years old, speaks 7 different languages. And I can't tell you how much I have learned from him in just 4 or 5, maybe 6 months of working with him. He's made me a better person. I don't know if he realizes it, but he's made me a better person in terms of my temperament, in terms of how I handle people and how I handle bad situations. Because we work in customer service, so we're dealing with people from all types of cultures from all over the planet. And it helps to have somebody working with you that comes from a different culture, that understands certain things, and that can give you some insight into why certain cultures behave the way they do. And for me, he's been an invaluable resource to me as a person.
Have you told him that? Have you told him? Shared that he makes
No, you know what? And I probably will. It's like sometimes I'm at work and I really don't think about the metamorphosis that I'm undergoing. Just like when I went to Toronto, and it's rare that I actually view myself as a guest or as a customer, because I'm so accustomed to being on the other side of giving customer service that I never really think about that. Case in point, I just turned 48. I've been renting from Enterprise Rent-A-Car for 25 years. Now, recently, they changed their policy in regards to what you need as a deposit to rent a car. Now, I'm a rewards member with Enterprise. Nobody told me anything about the policy change when I made the reservation. Nobody told me about the policy change when I scheduled for a ride. I was unaware of the policy change until I actually got to the location and went to rent a car. And to make a longer story, a shorter story, the young gentleman behind the counter, when I asked why didn't nobody tell me this, he had just said something about 30 seconds before. He said, I just told you. Now, in customer service, you never want to agitate a customer. And at that point in time, I was so pissed that I could have reached across the counter and smacked the daylights out of him. And I said, you know what, you can't do that. But I did call corporate and I filed a complaint. Now, for me to file a complaint with corporate, it takes an awful lot, because normally I dismiss 99.9% of the things that happen to me, because I understand being on the other side what happened. But to me, for a company the size of Enterprise not to send out notification, at least in the form of a letter, to its card-carrying membership was just unacceptable. So, you have to have that latitude to give yourself room to grow. And that's what surrounding yourself with other people who come from different cultures and different walks of life, whether they're male, female, deaf, blind. It doesn't matter, because a lot of people probably don't know. I take ASL classes, and I have been for the last couple of years. And that's another facet that I've been able to draw from and learn. So it puts me in contact with another segment of society that a lot of people probably never give a second thought about. People that are visually impaired, people that are deaf, people that are, you don't know where your source of inspiration can come from. you don't know where your next lesson in life can come from. So don't exclude people that you don't think you can learn anything from.
Yeah, I mean, like I always say, it's levels to all of this. As you get older, sooner or later you have to make changes. You cannot continue, of course, doing the same thing, being around the same people. Ultimately, you want to grow. And to grow, you have to reach out and find other challenges. You know, you don't want to be doing something and you don't have people that have your back or your best interest at heart. And again, I think we always put too much, and we talked about this the other week. I think we put too much value on time. Oh, I've known this person for 30 years, but then, like you said, Herb, you know someone from like work with them like 6 months. And in that 6 months, the way they impacted you was probably could be worth more than that person you've known for 30 years. What the hell is wrong with that imbalance? You want those people that can bring out those moments in you as you get older, because time is short. Whatever, you're not 17, 18 and got no worries in the world. You want to be around people that makes an impact or are impacted by things that you do. Other than that, I really don't know what else is to talk about with people who don't do that. I really don't. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm getting at. Don't have really nothing else to say. It may sound cold hearted. I don't care. So what? But that's just the way it is. Now, if we, all right, so I don't know, Kathy, Katie, she might have left. I'm not sure, but what is it? 10:02. Herb, if you want to give any
Yeah.
closing remarks.
Hey, just hey, take care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. You know, it's your life. You're the director of a supreme orchestra. Direct your life accordingly.
And then that about sum it up that you have to be the author or the storyteller of your life. You control it. You dictate it. If you want to, fall by the wayside, doing the same thing or dealing with the same people, that's on you. But if you still breathing, breathing, and you still healthy, and you still sharp mentally, the world is still yours. And you got to go out and take it because nobody's gonna give you anything. It's getting hard. It's getting harder and harder by the moment. So, like I said, that's where I'm at, and that's what I keep pushing towards. So, if you see, and I ain't even gonna get on here talking about 2020. I'm about to lose 20 pounds and all that because that shit don't work. It only lasts for a little bit, and then I go back. I'm just gonna do stuff, and I'm just gonna move in silence, and you'll just see me the metamorphosis, and you're like, man, he acting different, or he changing up. Like he's not speaking. You'll know where it came from. You'll know where it came from, and I'm constantly putting out those messages to let you know that's where I'm headed to. I'll be 50 next year, 50 in June. Got to do something different, man. I ain't about to uh I ain't about to let y'all talk me to death or drive me to death. So that's my point. Anyways, red flags in relationships. So many, we touched on some things. Just keep in mind these pointers to move forward. Again, all of this stuff, like I said, intertwines. It'll come back. So I'm not sure. What's the next week? Oh yeah, we'll have a show next week. It's probably the following week that I won't be going live. But who knows what next week topic is going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be some of the same points. All of this stuff is connected, whether you want to listen or not. But I think we all should listen and learn from each other, share the video, comment, share the watch parties, and just keep it going. And again, got to get your book, No Friday Foolishness, to reflect on some of this information and write it down. Self-help book dealing with all of these topics. $15, $20 to mail it. You got to get better with that, people. Got to get better. It's no way, no how that for some of you, when you look at longevity in years and you've been a part of that person's life, that you could say, nah, I ain't getting it or whatever. It's like a disgrace to me. It's a disgrace because me, I always say it. You come at me, you reach out to me, I got it, even if it's my last, because I want to see people grow and do better. I don't have that type of malice in my heart. I can have malice, but it ain't for somebody to grow and do better, because I believe that's what's going to make a change when we all try to do better. I'm out on that note because that could be a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
I don't know who just came in here.
This is Anwar.
Anwar, what's going on, brother? What's going
Big
on, man?
discussion 76. What's going on, fellas?
What's up,
What's
man?
going on, man?
Hey, I just want to catch you guys. I see you're at the end. Heard you're trying to eat this food.
Uh-huh.
And I said, let me try to get on here with you guys. What's going on?
Not much, man.
Hey, what's up, man?
Not much, not much.
We're just going to close it out, but if you got something to say, man, go ahead. Drop some jewels.
Hey, I saw your topic was relationship red flags.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, I see where you guys went with that. You guys were talking about, you know, improving your life and kind of growing outside the circle. But I'll give a quick relationship red flag. One is, you know, if the person tries to control you too early, if they're checking on your whereabouts, if they're, you know, tracking your comings and your goings like too early, you know, that's a red flag.
No question. No question.
In my opinion.
And you have a lot of people. You have a lot of people carrying it that way because of previous relationships without saying this is a clean slate. Let me try something different, but they go back to their behaviors because of failed relationships in the past, and then they carry that stuff on to new relationships.
Indeed, that's a huge red flag. People want to start checking your wallet, your purse, your cell phone. Jettison them. Get rid of them.
Yeah, I was out with somebody a couple weeks ago, a lady friend, and I just so happened to have to help somebody move twice, 2 weekends in a row. And she asked me, she said, "What you been doing?" I said, "Oh, I helped somebody move." And she looked at me, she didn't say nothing, and I was like, "What's wrong?" She said, "You did that last week." You know, and I was kind of like, well, yeah, but my friend needed me again, and I said, okay, this is not good. You know, because she's kind of keeping a scorecard already. You know,
yeah. Almost as if he was lying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it take a while. You know, you got to earn that credibility before you start checking people. And I think people latch on, or I don't know. I think it deals with filters. People just don't know when the appropriate time to say things and when I mean, she really shouldn't have had anything to say. Like, oh, you know, there's other ways she could have slid her little commentary in there and being too direct.
Well, you know, later on that night, she told me something else. She said, "I don't forget things."
Oh, yeah.
Is that in combination with her saying, "Okay, well, you did that last week," then I said, "Okay, this is not good." You know, so I think as we get older, you know, it kind of becomes a game of, you know, figuring out how not to get into some foolery before getting into the foolery. You know, so you gotta listen, and you kind of gotta understand what some of these things mean. You know, when you're hearing them and you're seeing them.
It's
like a game of chess. You got, unfortunately, that you have to take the genuineness or authentic, um, the ability to be authentic in relationships away, because you gotta kind of study these people and kind of look for cues and stuff to know. Like, man, they said this early, or I don't forget anything. Kind of assuming that, okay, eventually you're gonna slip up and say something. Who wants to carry on, go any further when you putting out statements like that? But again, it's other ways you could probably say that, like, oh, some way to slide it in there. I got a good memory. That comes out off different to me,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how you slide it in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Well, guys, I try to honor people time, and I understand it's the start of the week, and some of us, like I said, vacay. Ain't doing much, but I ain't gonna be around the little critters for a few days. So 4 days left, so I gotta have my energy up, because I can guarantee it's gonna be some fights this week. So I'm coming prepared with jeans and sneakers on, no slippery earls, and ready for combat. Ready for combat this week, because guarantee is going down.
All
So
right, everybody. Thank you for your time. Antoine, thank you for calling in. And Kathy, thank you personally for lending insight into what it's like to actively be in a situation where you are discussing red flags.
oh, definitely, and I second that, Kathy. I appreciate you. It takes a bold individual to come on and share their experiences, and I think a lot of times we kind of hide behind painful situations instead of releasing it. So that's tremendous on your part, and I appreciate it. And feel free to come on in any other time, because that's what we want to do, to have dialogue like this on a regular basis. So I'm out. Everybody have a productive week. If you're going through some storms, be safe, um, and always try to do the right thing. I'm out. Peace.
Take care, fellas.
All right. Thanks, buddy.